The impossible discovery, the silent void commander. Elena Vasquez floated in the observation deck of the mining vessel Perseverance, watching her crew work on the largest asteroid they had ever encountered. The rock was strange, too perfectly round, and too dense for something natural. But in the outer rim of the Kepler system, strange was normal. What wasn't normal was the way her scanners kept glitching every time they tried to penetrate deeper than 50 meters. "Commander, you need to see this," called Chief Engineer Marcus Chen through the comm system. His voice carried an edge that made Elena's stomach tighten. Marcus had been mining asteroids for 20 years. Nothing surprised him anymore. Elena pushed off from the viewport and glided through the ship's corridors toward the engineering bay. The Perseverance was humanity's most advanced mining vessel, but even she felt small compared to the massive asteroid they were harvesting. As she entered the engineering section, she found Marcus staring at a holographic display with his mouth hanging open. "What am I looking at, Marcus?" Elena asked, though part of her already knew this wasn't going to be good news. Marcus pointed at the three-dimensional image rotating slowly in front of them. "This isn't an asteroid, Commander, it's a ship. A human ship." Elena felt her breath catch in her throat. The scan showed the outline of something massive buried deep within the rock. It was sleek and predatory, like a shark frozen in time. But that was impossible. Humans had only been in space for 300 years, and their ships were bulky and practical, not elegant death machines like the thing on the screen. "That can't be right," Elena said. But even as she spoke, she could see the unmistakable lines of human architecture in the design. "Run the scan again." "I've run it 12 times, Marcus replied. "It's definitely human, but Commander, according to our materials analysis, this ship is at least 15,000 years old." The excavation begins. For 3 days, Elena's crew worked around the clock to clear away the asteroid material surrounding the buried warship. What they uncovered defied everything they thought they knew about human technology. The hull was made from a material that their scanners couldn't identify. It was darker than space itself, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. When they tried to cut through it with their plasma torches, the beam simply disappeared without leaving a mark. "It's like the ship is eating our energy," muttered Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's physicist. She had been studying the hull composition for hours without making any progress. "I've never seen anything like this material." Elena watched from the command center as her crew attempted every cutting tool they had. Nothing worked. The ship remained sealed, silent, and somehow menacing despite being buried for millennia. But what bothered her most was the feeling that something inside was watching them. "Commander," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission." "From Earth?" Elena asked, though she knew their position. "Made that impossible. Earth was 6 months away at light speed." "No, ma'am. It's coming from the Althari cruiser that's been shadowing us." Elena's blood ran cold. The Althari were one of the galaxy's most advanced species, and their ships were nearly invisible to human sensors. If they were revealing themselves now, something had changed. "Put them through," she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the elongated features of an Althari commander. Their skin was pale blue, and their large eyes seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. When they spoke, their voice was musical but urgent. "Human vessel, I am Commander Zeth Miran of the Althari Defense Fleet. You must cease your excavation immediately and withdraw from this system." Elena stepped forward. "This is Commander Vasquez. We're conducting legal mining operations in unclaimed space. By what authority do you order us to leave?" The Althari commander's expression grew grave. "By the authority of survival, Commander Vasquez. What you have found should never have been disturbed. Your species was not meant to discover this technology for another 1,000 years." The ship awakens before Elena could respond. Every system on the Perseverance went dead. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red shadows. Then something extraordinary happened. The buried warship began to glow. Light poured from seams in the hull that hadn't been visible before. The illumination was soft at first, like the glow of dawn, but it quickly intensified until the entire asteroid blazed like a small star. Elena and her crew watched in amazement as sections of the ship's hull began to shift and separate, revealing chambers and corridors that had been sealed for millennia. "All systems are coming back online," reported Marcus, his voice filled with wonder. "But Commander, we're detecting massive energy readings from inside that ship. Whatever's in there, it's waking up." The Althari commander's image flickered back to life on the main screen. His expression had changed from concern to outright fear. "Commander Vasquez, you must evacuate immediately. That vessel contains technology that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The Galactic Council has been waiting for this day, hoping it would never come." "What are you talking about?" Elena demanded. "What is that ship?" "According to our oldest records," Zethmiran replied, "it is one of humanity's temporal guardian vessels. Ships sent back through time to protect your species' future. We thought they were myths, stories told by primitive civilizations. But if one has awakened, the transmission cut out as a new signal filled the communications array. This one wasn't coming from the Althari ship. It was coming from inside the ancient warship, and it was broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. The voice that emerged was unmistakably human, but it spoke with an authority that made Elena's spine straighten instinctively. "This is the UES Eternal Vigilance Temporal Defense Protocol 77 Alpha. Unauthorized excavation detected. Initiating emergency activation sequence." Elena stared at the view screen as sections of the warship continued to unfold like a metal flower blooming in space. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the mining vessel Perseverance. Identify yourself and state your intentions." There was a pause that seemed to stretch for hours. Then the voice spoke again, and Elena could hear something almost human in its tone. "Commander Vasquez, I am Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding officer of the Eternal Vigilance. According to my temporal navigation records, I am speaking to you from your future. My ship was sent back 15,000 years to prevent a catastrophe that will otherwise destroy humanity and half the galaxy." Marcus grabbed Elena's arm. "Commander, that's impossible. Time travel is theoretical at best." But Elena was beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew about what was possible had just changed. "Admiral Chen, if you're really from our future, prove it." The response came immediately. "Commander Vasquez, your ship's registry number is UMS 4471, commissioned at Luna Station in 2387. Your chief engineer Marcus Chen has a scar on his left hand from a plasma leak in the Centauri system 3 years ago. Dr. Sarah Kim published a paper on exotic matter interactions that will revolutionize physics in 18 months, and Lieutenant Torres just broke up with his girlfriend last week and is thinking about sending her a message he'll regret." Torres went pale and dropped his communication headset. The warning. "Your proof is accepted," Elena said, though her voice was barely steady. "What catastrophe are you here to prevent?" The ancient warship was now fully activated, its hull gleaming with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. When Admiral Chen spoke again, her words carried the weight of terrible knowledge. "In your timeline, humanity will make contact with a species called the Devourers in approximately 200 years. They consume entire civilizations not for resources, but for the knowledge contained in living minds. By the time they reach Earth, it will be too late to stop them. But we discovered something in our timeline that changed everything. The Devourers aren't just destroyers. They're running from something even worse." Elena felt the universe shift around her. What could be worse than a species that consumes civilizations? "The thing that taught them to consume," came the reply. "And it's been watching this galaxy for millions of years, waiting for the right moment to feed." Suddenly, every ship in the system received the same message simultaneously. It wasn't coming from the human warship or the Althari cruiser. It was broadcasting from deep space from a source that the sensors couldn't locate. The message was simple, delivered in a voice that seemed to speak directly into their minds. "The awakening has begun. The harvest approaches. Prepare. Elena." Looked at her crew, seeing her own fear reflected in their faces. The ancient warship had awakened, carrying knowledge from humanity's future. But in doing so, it had also announced their presence to something that had been waiting in the darkness for eons. "Admiral Chen," Elena said, "I think we're going to need your help." The reply came with the sound of weapon systems powering up throughout the massive warship. "That's exactly why I'm here, Commander. But first you need to understand something important. This ship isn't just from your future. It's from a future where humanity survived what's coming. And survival required, making choices that will test everything you believe about right and wrong." As if summoned by her words, more ships began appearing throughout the system. Human vessels, Althari cruisers, and species Elena didn't recognize. All of them drawn by the signal the ancient warship had broadcast when it awakened. The battle for the future was about to begin, but Elena was beginning to realize that the real question wasn't whether humanity would survive. It was whether they would still be human when it was over. The awakening protocol, the gathering storm, the space around the ancient warship had become a maze of vessels from across the galaxy. Elena counted at least 40 different ship designs, representing species she had never seen before. Some were elegant curves of living metal, others were geometric shapes that hurt to look at. All of them maintained a respectful distance from the eternal vigilance, whose weapon systems glowed with barely contained energy. "Commander," Lieutenant Torres called from his station, "we're receiving communications from 17 different species. They all want to know what's happening, and most of them sound scared." Elena wasn't surprised. When a 15,000-year-old warship announces its presence by broadcasting across the galaxy, fear was the appropriate response. But what worried her more was the silence from Earth. The Galactic communications network should have been buzzing, with messages from humanity's home system. Instead, there was nothing. "Admiral Chen," Elena said, addressing the ancient ship, "why isn't Earth responding to any of this?" The pause before the answer told Elena everything she needed to know. "Commander Vasquez, in my timeline, Earth was destroyed in the year 2847. My ship and crew are what remains of the human colonial defense force. We were sent back not just to prevent the catastrophe, but to ensure that this version of Earth survives." "What's coming?" Dr. Kim looked up from her console, her face pale. "Commander, I'm detecting temporal energy readings from inside that ship. If they really have time travel technology, the implications are staggering. They could change anything, prevent any disaster, save anyone they wanted to save." "But Admiral..." Chen's response carried the weight of terrible experience. "Dr. Kim, time travel isn't a magic solution. Every change creates ripples. Save one life, and 10 others die. Prevent one war, and 3 worse conflicts take its place. We've learned that the hard way. This mission is our final attempt, using everything we learned from 1,000 failures." Suddenly, the Althari commander's ship moved closer, and Zethmiron's image appeared on the main screen again. "Admiral Chen, the Galactic Council has records of your ship. We know what happened in your timeline. If you're here, it means the Devourers are coming early." "The timeline has already been altered," Admiral Chen confirmed. "Someone or something has been manipulating events, accelerating the Devourers' approach. They should have arrived in 2587. Now they'll be here in less than 50 years. Elena felt her stomach drop. 50 years? That's not enough time to prepare. "It is if we use the knowledge from my timeline," Admiral Chen replied. "But it will require unprecedented cooperation between species that have been enemies for centuries. And it will require humanity to abandon some of its most fundamental beliefs about warfare and survival." The price of knowledge, the eternal vigilance, began transmitting data packages to every ship in the system. Elena watched as her computer system struggled to process information that was centuries ahead of current human technology. The data included ship designs, weapon blueprints, and tactical strategies that would revolutionize galactic warfare. But it also included something else. Records of every major decision made during humanity's fight against the Devourers in Admiral Chen's timeline. The victories and defeats, the sacrifices and compromises, and the terrible moment when humanity realized that survival required becoming something they had never wanted to be. "These weapon designs," Marcus said, studying the schematics with growing horror. "They're designed to target specific genetic markers. They're species-specific bioweapons. Admiral Chen's voice carried the weight of necessity. The Devourers aren't just conquerors, Chief Engineer Chen. They're a plague that spreads by consuming the neural patterns of other species and adding them to their collective consciousness. Traditional weapons don't work because they adapt too quickly. These weapons target the biological foundation of their collective intelligence. Dr. Kim shook her head. This is genocide on a galactic scale. We can't build weapons designed to eliminate entire species. Doctor, Admiral Chen replied, in my timeline, that moral stance cost us 37 worlds and 2 billion lives before we learned better. The Devourers don't share our concept of mercy or restraint. They view compassion as a weakness to be exploited. Elena studied the tactical data, trying to understand the scope of what they were facing. The Devourers weren't just another hostile species. They were something fundamentally different, a force that consumed entire civilizations and left nothing behind but empty worlds and silence. What about the other species? Elena asked. Will they agree to build these weapons? Zethmaran answered, from his ship. The Althari Council has already begun debates. Some believe we should use this knowledge to prepare for war. Others think we should attempt to find a peaceful solution. There is no peaceful solution, Admiral Chen said firmly. We tried negotiation, diplomacy, even surrender. The Devourers don't want territory or resources. They want to consume every thinking mind in the galaxy and add it to their collective consciousness. They see individual identity as an imperfection to be corrected. The enemy revealed, as if summoned by their discussion, space itself began to shimmer near the edge of the system. Elena watched in fascination as reality seemed to bend and twist, creating a portal that hurt to look at directly. Through the distortion, shapes began to emerge. Ships, but not like any she had ever seen. They looked organic, grown rather than built, with surfaces that shifted and pulsed like living tissue. Devourer scouts, Admiral Chen announced, and Elena could hear weapons systems charging throughout the ancient warship. They've been drawn by our temporal wake. They know something has changed. The alien ships moved with predatory grace, circling, the gathered fleet like sharks studying their prey. Elena counted 12 of them, each one easily twice the size of her mining vessel. But what terrified her most was the way they seemed to communicate. Flashes of light passed between them in patterns too complex for any computer to decode. They're scanning us, reported Torres. But not just our ships. Commander, I think they're scanning our minds. Elena felt it then, a cold presence touching the edges of her consciousness. It was curious, intelligent, and utterly alien. For a moment, she glimpsed something vast and hungry, a collective intelligence that spanned multiple star systems. Then Admiral Chen's ship fired. The weapon that emerged from the eternal vigilance wasn't like anything Elena had ever seen. Instead of energy or projectiles, it fired something that looked like crystallized time itself. When it struck the lead Devourer ship, the vessel simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed or vaporized, but erased, as if it had never been there at all. The remaining Devourer ships recoiled, their formation breaking as they retreated toward their portal. But before they disappeared, they transmitted something. Not a message or a warning, but pure information that burned through every communication system in the fleet. When the transmission ended, Elena found herself on her knees, blood trickling from her nose. Around her, her crew was in similar condition. Only the image of Admiral Chen remained unaffected. Temporal shields, the Admiral explained. The Devourers just learned that their timeline has been compromised. They'll accelerate their invasion schedule. Elena struggled to her feet, wiping the blood from her face. How long do we have? 6 months, perhaps less, but Commander, you need to understand something important. The weapons I just used, the knowledge I've shared with your fleet, it all comes with a price. Using this technology will change humanity. You'll become something harder, more ruthless, more willing to make impossible choices. Dr. Kim looked up from her console, her face grim. The genetic modifications in these ship designs, they're not just for weapons. They're for the crews. Enhanced reflexes, improved neural processing, reduced emotional responses to violence. The war against the Devourers isn't just a battle for survival. Admiral Chen continued. It's a race to see who can adapt faster. They consume civilizations and add their knowledge to their collective. We had to learn to do the same in our own way. Elena studied the data streaming across her screens, ship designs that required crews to undergo biological modification, weapons that could erase entire star systems from existence, tactical strategies that treated entire species as expendable, resources in a larger war. This isn't just about fighting the Devourers, she realized. You're asking us to become like them. Not like them, Admiral Chen corrected. Better than them. Stronger, faster, more adaptable. The Devourers consume individuality. We learn to preserve it while still achieving unity of purpose. But yes, Commander, it required sacrifices that would have been unthinkable before the war began. The choice around the system, the gathered fleet began to disperse. Some ships, particularly those from more peaceful species, jumped to hyperspace immediately after receiving the Devourer technology data. Others remained, their crews clearly debating whether to accept the terrible knowledge that Admiral Chen offered. Elena looked at her own crew, seeing the fear and uncertainty in their faces. They were miners and engineers, not soldiers. But in 6 months, everyone in the galaxy would be a soldier whether they wanted to be or not. Admiral Chen, Elena said finally, if we accept your modifications, if we build your weapons and adopt your strategies, will we still be human when it's over? The pause stretched for a long moment before the answer came. Commander Vasquez, humanity isn't defined by your biology or your current limitations. It's defined by your willingness to protect what matters most, even when that protection requires becoming something greater than what you were before. Elena looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that vast darkness an enemy beyond imagination was preparing to consume everything she had ever known or loved. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Begin the modifications, she ordered. All crew members will undergo the enhancement procedures. We'll retrofit the Perseverance with Admiral Chen's weapon systems. Marcus stepped forward. Commander, are you sure about this? Elena turned to face her crew, seeing in their eyes the same determination that had driven humanity to the stars in the first place. The galaxy is about to find out what humans are capable of when we stop holding back. God help us all. As if in response to her words, the Eternal Vigilance launched something into space, not a weapon or a probe, but a signal that would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy within days. It was a message, broadcast in every known language and several that hadn't been invented yet. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Temporal Defense Force. The Devourers are coming. Prepare for war. Humanity will show you the way. Elena watched the signal expand into hyperspace, carrying with it the knowledge that would either save the galaxy or transform it into something unrecognizable. Either way, there was no going back. The future had awakened, and it was hungry for victory at any cost. In the distance, space began to shimmer again as more portals opened. But this time, the ships that emerged were human. Vessels from Admiral Chen's timeline, carrying crews that had already paid the price of survival. The reinforcements had arrived, and the real war was about to begin. Elena stood on the bridge of her transformed ship, feeling the modifications already beginning to change her perception and reflexes. Around her, her crew was adapting to abilities they had never possessed before. They were still human, but they were becoming something more, something that could win.